Students, this is the video where I'm going to review your research paper assignment for this semester. Although your first part of your research paper assignment is not due until the end of February, I want to go ahead and give you the assignment so that you have time to be thinking about it, be considering what you might want to do, what author, what stories you might want to select for the research paper. My theory here is that if I give you enough time, then by the time it's time to start turning assignments in, then you will have had plenty of time to do work on it. So let's just go over the research paper assignment together. First of all, the details of the assignment. This research paper is a critical analysis of a short story written by an American or British author. This paper will also include biographical information about the author and information regarding historical and cultural context behind the story. The purpose of this story is to provide a cumulative assessment of students' critical thinking, analysis, research, argumentation, and general writing skills. Scoring and due dates for this research paper. The research paper accounts for I don't know why that says 45%. The research paper accounts for 40% of your final grade, not 45, but 40% of your final grade in this course. That grade is comprised of 6 components and is scored and due on the dates as shown. All the deadlines for submission are 11:59 p.m. on the date that it's due. You will upload everything to Canvas. So your topic proposal is due on February the 27th. We'll talk about these closer to the due dates. I'll explain what a topic proposal is and what I expect to see in your topic proposal. That's 10% of the grade, and it's due February 27th. The outline is 10% of the grade, and it's due March 17th. Your works cited page is 20% of the grade, and it's due March 24th. Draft 1 is due March 26th. It's 15% of the grade. Draft 2 is 30% of the grade, and it's due March 31st. And then draft 3 is 15% of the grade, and it's due April 9th. Now, those percentages there are not percentages of your total grade in this semester. They are percentages what percent of this assignment grade each one of these components will get. All right, moving on. Assignment specifics. Students may select any short story by any American or British author. Short stories by authors from other countries, or which were not originally written in English but have been translated into English, may be used only with prior permission from the professor. This permission must be obtained no later than the date of the topic proposal. So you can select any American or British author and any story by an American or British author, and you do not have to get approval from me. If you choose an author from another country, or if you choose a story that was originally written in a different language and translated into English, then you have to have my permission before you can proceed. This paper will be a minimum of 2,000 words and a maximum of 4,000 words, and that does not include your works cited page. The paper will be formatted according to MLA guidelines, including line spacing, margins, pagination, heading, title, and citations, both in text and works cited. This paper is an academic paper, and as such, must be written in standard English using proper grammar, punctuation, spelling, capitalization, sentence structure, etc. The diction of this paper should be formal. So in other words, don't use informal language like gonna, don't use contractions like don't, won't, wouldn't, right? This is formal paper, so use formal language. The assignment due dates for this research paper are firm. Absolutely no late work will be accepted for any reason, and no extensions will be given. this is really important that you understand this on this research paper, folks, because it is so big and because it takes me so long to get them graded, I just absolutely will not take any late work on any component of the research paper at all for any reason. So, if something's going on and you're going to be out of town on the day that something is due, just make sure that you have the ability to get it turned in. Since these are all turned in online, I mean, really, you should be able to do that anywhere, so it shouldn't be a problem. But just so you know, I will absolutely not take any late work, and I will not give any extensions on the research paper. Moving on, this is how the paper is to be structured and organized. Your first paragraph, of course, is your introduction. You'll need to have a concrete thesis statement and all of the standard things that an introduction has. Part 1 of the research paper is biographical information and author's perspective. In this section of the paper, which should be 1 to 2 paragraphs, you will provide a brief biography of the author. I don't need to know where they went to kindergarten or what their favorite vegetables were. I want good stuff. I want the things that made them who they ended up being as authors. You'll need to write about their perspective. What are the things in their lives that affected them dramatically and caused them to become the people who they are? In other words, provide interesting and relevant information regarding the author's background and experiences which connect them to the work. You must have at least 2 outside sources for this section. At least one of those sources must be a print source. In just a minute, I'm going to talk to you about what print sources are and what they are not. Part 2, cultural perspective. Again, this should be 1 to 2 paragraphs. What was going on in the United States or in the world when this short story was written that might be relevant to the short story? The cultural background should include information relating to politics, science, the arts, lifestyles. In other words, I want you to connect the short story in at least 2 ways to what was going on in the world at the time that the story was written. You must have at least 2 outside sources for this section. Print sources only, no web sources. So in other words, no websites. These all have to be print sources. Part 3 is your critical analysis of the paper. This is the biggest chunk of the paper at 3 to 4 paragraphs. And this is a discussion of 3 or 4 of the following 1 paragraph each. How does the author use them in a story? What is their significance? How do they affect the story? Why did the author choose to use them? You must have at least 2. I'm sorry, that should be 2, not 8. You must have at least 2 outside sources for this section. Print sources only, no web sources. So, in this section, you're going to look at irony, symbols, character archetypes, author's style, diction, tone, literary devices, critical theory, or some other original idea that you come up with on your own. But you're going to discuss at least 3 or 4 of those at 1 paragraph each in this section. And again, it's 2 outside sources, not 8. At least 2. Part 4, this is the thematic analysis. This is 1 to 2 paragraphs. I want you to identify 1 or 2 themes present in the story and write about how the author illustrates them. Examples of how authors illustrate themes can include, but aren't limited to, characters, setting, conflicts, climax, resolution. You must use the evidence from the original text and at least 2 outside sources for this section to conduct your thematic analysis. And this should be print sources only. Now, remember, you're going to need, and then the conclusion paragraph as well. You're going to need to use direct quotes from the story itself in part 3 and part 4 at least. I'm going to need to see evidence from the text to support your arguments in part 3 and part 4, so don't forget to do that. All right, let's talk about outside sources for a minute. Some of the outside sources you choose probably will have information that's relevant to more than one section of this paper. You can duplicate sources across sections. However, in addition to the original text, you must have at least 8 outside sources on this research paper. That's in addition to the original text. So the original text is one source, but then you have to have at least 8 other outside sources on this research paper. Now, what is a print source? Well, a print source is any source that originally appeared in print. Even if you download it from the library database in an electronic format, I still consider that a print source because it was originally in print. So an article from a journal, a newspaper, a magazine, or a book that you retrieved electronically from the library database is considered a print source as long as it was originally published in print. Plagiarism is the intentional or unintentional use of another person's work and passing it off as your own. There's absolutely no room for plagiarism on this paper. If you plagiarize any one of the drafts, you will receive a 0 on all 3 drafts. Let me say that one more time. If you plagiarize on any one of the drafts, you will receive a 0 on all 3 drafts. This will dramatically impact your overall grade for the semester, so do not plagiarize. Independent work, because of the fast-paced nature of this course, you will not have any time in class to work on your research paper. Actually, you will, because you're in an online course. That's more for the face-to-face students, so you'll have time in class, and I encourage you to use that time wisely. While you'll not have additional homework during the time that you're working on the research paper, there will be other topics being discussed and other assignments being completed during class. That's really only in one of the weeks of the research paper. We'll actually start the poetry section the last week of the research paper, and so you may have an assignment due that week. You may ask questions if needed, but once the project begins, you need to make sure that you devote as much time to the project as you possibly can. I'm always here for questions, but please, please don't procrastinate on this particular assignment. Procrastination will absolutely destroy your grade on this particular assignment. Now, as far as the rubrics that I'm using to grade this, I'm using the English 1301 rubrics for drafts 1, 2, and 3, not making any changes to them at all. They're posted on the resources, course resources module on Canvas. You can review those if you need to, but you should remember them from English 1301. All right, guys, that's it. That is a quick review of the research paper assignment. If you have any questions at all about this assignment, please don't hesitate to contact me. Contact me sooner rather than later so that I can help you as much as possible. We'll talk more about these different components as the time gets closer. We'll also talk about how to determine what are good sources and not good sources. So don't worry about that. Just be thinking about it and start deciding which author and which story you want to use. All right, folks, that is it. We are done with this particular lecture. Thanks for your time. Have a great week.